series of domes on a roof that looks kind of like an ice cream cone. So the less things are just like straight up and down in Revit, the more complicated things get. But I think also it's just kind of like a complicated geometry to think about in the first place because spheres don't meet easily. So if I took a look at like some other buildings, like how do these domes meet flat walls, right? So it could be something like this that you might see in Greek architecture where, let's see if we can get a little bit closer here. Oh no, it's not going to make the picture bigger. But you can kind of see that there's like an octagon, right? So there's an octagon and there's a dome over it, and there's flat roof at the edges of the dome. Another way it might work in this case, this is St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice. So here there's a series again of flat roofs, and then the circle of the dome roof meets that flat roof, and there can be a series of them. It might also be that there's just always like a tower coming up that is circular that will meet the dome. So for ours, let's say, let's try to at least get an idea of and plan what we want this to look like. So if I go to my level 3 plan, I'm looking at this one. We're saying that we want there to be four kind of scoops on this level and then one more scoop on the top. So I'm going to go to Annotate, Detail Lines, and here I'm just drawing in 2D what I think I want. So let's say I'm going to have like 4 of these. So I want a midpoint. So I'm going to start out kind of using this just to figure out like where is the middle of this. I often draw guidelines to help me out. So let's say that I want 4 of these circles, and I want it to kind of be touching these 2 lines. Okay, so I'm going to have one dome here, and then I think I'm going to mirror it over all the sides. Well, but I still have that center dome I need to make room for. So maybe I really need to think about that center dome first. So I want the center dome to be right here. And maybe that one's a little bit larger, and then the ones on the side will need to be smaller. So if I now copy this over, this is going to have to be a little bit smaller here. So I'm going to bring this down to like, oh, too small. And I can also drag this edge out. So I'm not sure this is exactly what, it might depend on what your floor plan looks like, what exactly these domes will look like, but I'm going to use this as the dome that I'm going to be, the footprint of the dome that'll be copying around. So I'm just going to mirror it over. So under here, under Modify Lines, Mirror, I'm mirroring that line. Then I can select both of these by holding down Shift. Or sorry, maybe it's Control. By holding down Control, I can select both of them, and then I can use this line, this tool to mirror it over the middle as well. Okay, so I'm going to have a center dome, and then I'm going to have these side domes. So that's helpful to start with. I'm going to create a couple more lines for myself. So I'm going to make some diagonals here coming out at 45 degrees. And that's going to help me get those other domes kind of where they need to be. So I think right now I'm not being very precise with where those are. So if I can kind of find the quadrant of this, like the center of that, I could make that a little bit more precise. So I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees. And then I'm going to kind of get that. I'm going to bring this point. Try to get that point kind of on that line so I know it looks about right. Okay, and this wants to be a little bit bigger. So I know it seems like a lot of fussing, but it's good to kind of have an idea of where you're going before you start. Okay. Go ahead and mirror these again. Mirror those again. Okay, so here are my 4 domes, 5 domes, one big one in the middle. So basic idea for making a dome is that we need to be able to have a plane that'll give me the where I can draw like the section of that dome in order to revolve it around. So we're going to do the middle one first because that's kind of the easiest one. So why it's easy is that we already have a view going this way. So if you zoom out, you should see this little triangle here. That is my elevation. So I can bring that in a little bit. But if I double click on here, it's going to bring me to an elevation of my view, which is fabulous. So right now I'm going to want this south elevation, my level 3 plan, and my 3D open all at once. To do that, I'm going to type in WT for window towel, and that'll allow me to kind of see a few things at once. I want to omit some of this other stuff from my view, so I'm going to take my section box. If your section box doesn't show up in 3D, go over to Properties for your 3D view, and over here under Extents, click on Section Box, and you should get these little lines here, and then you can drag in the sides so you don't have to look at everything at once, which I find helpful sometimes. Okay. So that's a little bit easier to look at. Great. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make my dome. So I need to, I need to figure out what the radius is that I'm working with, and also what the height is that I want for these. So to start out with, I'm actually going to make extrusions just so I can kind of see like where these things are in my elevation as well. So I'm going to go to Architecture, Component, Model in Place. Here I'm going to pick Roofs and hit OK. So now I'm going to come over here to Extrusion, and this again, I'm just making extrusion to begin with so that I can see where this is located. So I'm going to hit my check mark. Okay, and here I can drag these down. So let's say I want my dome to be about that high. We'll make for it. Okay, I need to have a profile. Oh, sorry, I was going to do the center one first. My bad. All right, so let's do that one more time. So go to Create, Extrusion. Make sure you're in your level 3 view when you do this. Extrusion, use the green picker line to pick the outside of that. Hit the green check, then you can come into your south view and you can drag this down. Okay, so let's say this top one is going to be maybe here. Okay, so I'm going to go now to Create, and I'm going to do a Revolve. It's going to ask me to specify a work plane. And here I needed to make a plane. So I'm going to hit Cancel. I'm going to come back into my top view. I'm going to make a reference plane, and I'm going to use that center line of my building. I'm going to name my plane Centerline 1. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to Create, Revolve. Make sure you're in your, apologies, make sure you're in this view when you do that rather than your top view, because otherwise it'll assume you want this to be your main, the view you're drawing on. So I'm going to come back over to here, then I'm going to go to Create, Revolve. I'm going to pick a plane, so under Name, I'm going to go to my Centerline 1 and hit OK. And now I'm drawing what one section of this roof is going to look like. So I know that I want it to have a curve, so I'm going to come over here to my curve. It's going to come from here, maybe that much of it. Maybe down to here is kind of the domed portion of it. And then I think I want it to be straight when it hits to here. And I could also do that as a separate wall. And then I'm going to offset this 1 foot to represent the thickness of the roof. And then here I'm going to come straight down, straight across. I need this to be a closed line. Once I feel pretty good about this, I'm going to go to my axis line. My axis line is what it's revolving around. So I'm going to put that in straight through the center, and then I'm going to hit the check mark. So I need to delete the original reference extrusion I made, and there is my initial dome. Okay, so I'm going to finish my model here. I'm going to do these all as separate pieces. Okay, so here I have my first roof dome. I'm going to do this one next, and then I'm going to mirror it around. So very similar process for this. And hopefully it'll go a little bit faster because we've already done it once. So I'm going to go to Architecture, Component, Model in Place, go down to Roof, hit OK. And here the first thing I want to do is make my reference plane. So I'm going to click Reference Plane. I'm going to use this line I already made, click from there to there, give it a name, and I'm going to call this 45-degree rough. Click outside, then go to Create, Revolve. And here's where I made a mistake again, right? I didn't have this selected, but I can set my plane later. So I'm going to set Work Plane, and I'm going to go to 45 rough and hit OK. It's going to tell me it needs to open a new view. So I'm going to go to Elevation South, and that'll be over here. So now I'm creating that second view. What's a little bit tricky is like I don't have a section looking right at this so that I can draw that accurately. And I didn't create my extrusion to begin with to kind of guide me, so I'm going to be guessing a little bit here. So I'm going to use my curve tool, come from here, that's where I think the center is, and about how I think I want this. And I think that's not, I want it to level out a little bit when it reaches the roof so that I know it'll hit like a straight point. So maybe from here to here it gets straight, and then I'm going to use my trim tool to trim from here to here. Okay, I need to offset this, and I'm going to keep my roof thickness the same, 1 foot. Then I use my line tool to finish off these areas. Okay, so here's kind of my second dome. I still need to do with my axis line, which is going to be right in the middle here. I'm going to hit the check mark. Okay, so it's closed. It's just a little bit in the wrong spot. So I should be able to kind of move it over to where I want it here, as long as I'm staying on that line. It looks like it's a little bit smaller than I initially drew. I'm actually happy with that. I could always make it a little bigger though. So if I come back over here, I can go to Edit Revolve, and then I can take this and scale it up a little bit. So let's say I wanted this to come out a little bit. Like for example, maybe I want the base to come out. Right now it's like 3 foot from there to there. Let's say I want it to be 3'6". So I could type in 3'6". Just to give myself a guidepost. I'm going to delete these lines. Then I'm going to use this tool again, come from here over to my midpoint. Use my curve again. Trim this to here. I don't need it to go below that roof line, so I'm going to make this shorter. Then I'm going to offset it 1 foot. And I'm going to close that up. Make sure that this line is actually on your axis line, otherwise it'll have a hole in it. And hit my check mark. Okay, so that came out, the size is a little bit better there. So I'm going to finish my model. Okay, rather than recopying this 100 times, I'm just going to mirror it. So I'm going to click my mirror, and I'm going to select this, go to mirror, and then mirror it over the center line. And then I can select both of these by holding down Control. And make sure you actually are selecting, it looks like I want to make sure I'm selecting the 3D part. Like, see if it turns blue in here, I knew I selected it. All right, so I'm going to select those two and mirror it over the center line. So now I have my 4 domes here. Okay, so the one challenge of this though, like among other things, is that right now I would still get water in my building because there's all these empty spots. I'm going to just have a flat roof to fill that in. So I'm going to go to Architecture, Roof. I'm going to pick lines. I'm going to pick the outer line of my building. And then here, I don't want anything to define the slope. So I'm going to select here, uncheck define slope, select here, uncheck define slope. The other thing I want to look at is I only want it to fill in where I don't have other roofs happening. So I'm going to use some of these lines I put in here already. To help make some holes in this roof so that I'm not creating places that I can't get through, that I won't be able to see up through. Otherwise, what was the point of the dome, right? Okay, so I should have holes in there. I need to make sure that everything is closed. There's no like random open parts or overlapping parts. If that all seems happy, I'm going to hit the check mark. Okay, so it's too high. So I need to offset the distance. So let's see how high it is. So if I go into on this view here, let's see, I need to drop it down 5 feet. So I'm going to select it over here, base offset from level, put in -5 feet. And now that is in a better location for me. And at the same time, if I were to go inside this building and look up, I can see into those domes, so I didn't block off those domes with my roof.